Mishnah.
The Mishnah, yeah. What's that? No. Okay. We're going to start the Mishnah in 51. Right? Bar Shel, Shnei Shutim. We thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. In this class of learning, we should have Beis Hamikdash immediately. So it starts like this. Bar Shel Shnei Shutim. The Gemara is going to discuss how this happens, but if you have a pit that belongs to two people, overall of Arishan like you saw. So the first guy walks by the pit and he doesn't cover it. Basheni like you saw. The second guy doesn't cover it. So Sheni Chayev, the second guy is going to be responsible for the damages.
Maybe because someone fell after the second.
Someone fell in after the second guy. So, and he was the one that was there. The Gemara is going to explain that actually the first guy actually handed over the lid to the second guy, that he should be covering it. And that's why the second guy becomes a shomer, the first guy. Otherwise, if the whole story didn't happen, then two people own a pit, they're both chayev. They're both chayev. Amri, the Gemara starts off discussing, how did we even have this scenario? How did this come about that two people own a pit? So, if we would follow the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, we're following in Rabba's view of Rabbi Akiva, that says that a pit in his own property is chayev. We're talking about mishkach sabachatz shel shneim. Talking about that two people owned a field, a courtyard, and they dug a pit. And what happened was, hefkira rishus and leifka bayran. 51. So, and then they made their property, ownerless. So because two people owned it, so now two people now own the pit. Why do they have to make the property ownerless? Because they want to make that the people that are walking there, well, not that they want to make, but we need a scenario where the people that are walking there were allowed to be there. So that's why it's a bar of both. Why does it have to be v'leihif kebayron? Why does it have to be that they didn't? Because Tosfos holds, this is Tosfos proof, Tosfos holds that if you dug a pit in your own property, there's two possibilities. But if you dug a pit in your own property, which you were allowed to do, then you're mafkir your rishus, but you keep the pit, then that pit has a chiyuv. Then you're obligated for that pit because that pit is yours and people are still allowed to be there. But if you,
that's why you have to cover.
But if you own a property and you dig the pit, which you're allowed to do, and then you're mafkir not only your rishus but you're mafkir also the pit, and Tosfos says that you're going to be pater, because he says, look, you were allowed to dig the pit, and the obligation of the pit being yours isn't here either, because you were just mafkir the pit also. So you came up with an excuse from both ends. What do you mean? I dug the pit in my property. So yeah, but the property is not yours. He said, well, the pit's not mine either. So from both ends, you'd be exempt. You were allowed to dig it, and you don't own it. Why are you chayev for? Either you weren't allowed to dig it, okay, you're chayev, or you own it, okay, you're chayev. So anyway, whatever the case is, how do we have a case where the shutfim that own a pit, we're talking about because they own the property and they were mafka the property. But if we hold that other opinion that Barbershus is pater, that you're exempt with a pit in your own property, that's the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel, according to Rabbah. So then, and what's going to be a case where you're going to be chayev on a pit? If it's in your own property, you're exempt. It says, okay, it has to be in a public property. In a public property, remember, Rabbah held that everyone agrees in Rosh Hashanah, it's going to be chayev. So, so how do you have a pit of partners in a public property? Let's say two people told one person, I want you to dig a pit for me. So this guy that digs the pit is a shliach from two people. Zil Karilan, go dig for us. Basel Karilahu, and he went and dug a pit for them in the public property. It says, Ein shliach l'dvar avera. It's still not shuchim. It only belongs to the guy that dug the pit. Well, actually, anything that could cause damage, besides that there's an obligation to pay, is also considered an avera. Yeah. And this Gemara could be a proof for that. But you're not allowed to cause the damage. Leave it unguarded, right? That's what we're talking about. You dig a pit and you leave it unguarded. That would be the Aveira. So you're saying the digging isn't the Aveira, it's the cover that. Okay. Vidakara hai chamisha v'hai chamisha. Let's say one person dug 5. This is probably what you were thinking the whole time. One person dug 5, another person dug the other 5. The stalkel and So no, the first person, his action disappears when the second guy continues digging. So, Hanichala Rabbi, this is going to be the main part of our sugya today. This machlekes here. We don't know this machlekes yet, but the Gemara is going to introduce it in a moment, and it starts off with the end. According to Rabbi, it's possible to say, according to Rabbi, we're talking about it was only damages here. It didn't tell us what happened. Did the animal die or was the animal damaged? So it's not telling us how deep the pit is. Yeah.
Going back to Ein Shliach L'Devar Avera.
Yeah.
Therefore, which of the two is liable?
Neither. It would be the guy that dug the pit.
That dug the pit.
Yeah. 2 people told a worker, we're going to pay you to dig a pit. So the worker would be chayav.
The one who actually does it.
Yeah, he should have listened to Hashem, not to these cronies.
Interesante. Are they?
Yeah, 1 second. You got it? Let me just mute it first. Okay. Okay. So now we're holding that according to Rebbe, it's possible. But according to Rebbe, if there was a case of death over here, the animal died. Or according to the Rabbanan, whether it was damages or death, this case is not going to work out. Now, we don't know what Rebbe's opinion is, what the Rabbanan's opinion is. We never learned that before. But the Gemara introduces it now, and it says, my Rebbe, my Rabbanan, what are you telling me about Rebbe? What are you telling me about the Rabbanan? What is this machlekes that you never told us before? So it says, the Tanya was taught in a brisa. Actually, I see on the side, we did learn it before in Daf Yod. Okay, that's long enough. It was taught in the brisa. One person digs a pit 9 tefachim. It's not enough to cause death. It's enough to cause damage. Another person comes in, digs the last tefach. He makes it to 10 tefachim. So we say, ha'achron chayiv. The last person is going to be chayiv. That's the opinion of the Rabbanan, the Tanna Kamma. He made it into a real pit that can cause death. So he takes over all the responsibility of this pit because he dug it a little deeper. Rebbe says, achron lemisa. The last person that dug the last tefach, he made it that now it can cause death. So he's going to be chayav if it causes death. But both of them, even the first one, was his doing could cause damages. 9 tefachim we know could cause a damage. It's only the death that it couldn't have caused. So according to Rebbe says that both of them are going to be chayav if a damage happens. It's only for death that only the last one would be chayav. The second one would be chayav. So now,
whether you did the first, the last, any part of it, you're chayav.
For Nizakin, yeah.
For Nizakin.
That's only the opinion of Rebbe, not the opinion of the Rabbanan. My time with the Rabbanan. What's the reason for the Rabbanan that the last person always has the responsibility? The Makra pasuk says, "Ki yiftach v'chi yichra." Says that if someone digs a pit, or if someone opens a pit, or if someone digs a pit, and we had a Gemara similar to this before. It says, "If you chayev for just taking a lid off a pit, for digging the pit, why does it even have to say that if someone digs a pit, even if he opens the pit, he takes the cover off? You know, in those days they had wells and they had a pit and they had a cover on top. So you took the cover off and you didn't put it back on, you'd be chayev. You didn't even dig it. You just used it and you didn't put the cover on. So if you're chayev for doing that, for sure you're chayev if you actually went there and dug the pit. Ella, it's coming to tell us. Why is it saying digging? It's coming to tell me that if one person started digging and another person continued digging, that the second person that continues digging, he takes over the responsibility that the first person left. The guy left his shovel. Remember the guy that had the dream, Itzik of Krakow? He had a dream that there's a treasure under the bridge in Prague. And anyway, he left his shovel there. He started digging. He left the shovel. Another guy finished the pit. The second guy is chayev. Okay.
You got the prize, right?
He got the prize because the other guy started digging. Rebbe Amarlach. So what would Rebbe say?
You didn't share it.
What would Rebbe say to you? Because we just had a limud from a pasuk, just had a teaching from the pasuk that it's the second guy that continues digging that takes over all the responsibility. And Rebbe doesn't hold that. Rebbe says that the first guy is also responsible if damages happen. It says Hanu mitzrich tzrichi kedamrinan. Gemara doesn't have the patience to go over what it said before. I think what it said before was that he said like this, that if he says we used that already, that we already quoted that, and we used it for something else. You can't use it again for this. We said that if it didn't say both the digging and the opening, then I could have thought that maybe if you open the pit, then you're able to cover it. But if you dig the pit, then covering it is not enough. You would need to fill it up. And if it would say, if you dug the pit, then I would say that you need to cover it. But if you just opened it, maybe you're not responsible, even if you didn't cover it. Maybe it was already dug. Maybe the first guy's responsible. So it has to say both. So basically, what Rebbe just did was he said that pasuk that you have a teaching from, that you're trying to tell me that the second person that digs is going to be responsible, we already used it just to tell us the basic concept of when you're responsible, when you're not responsible. You can't teach me now that the second guy is responsible. But the Rabbanan also used the pasuk to teach me those teachings. Alahaina time with the Rabbanan, we're going to have a different source for the rabbis. Damarkra, they say ki yichre ishbar echad v'leishnayim, that only one person is responsible by a pit. When a man digs a pit, says a man, it's talking about that there's going to be one person responsible, and obviously it's going to be the second guy. The Rebbe, what does Rebbe do? It also says one person. It says, that's coming to tell me when it says a man digs a pit, it's coming to tell me that only if a man digs a pit is their responsibility, not if an animal digs a pit. The owner of the animal is not responsible for damages that happen in that pit. Some of the animals, after they relieve themselves, they like dig a little and cover it up. So the owner's not responsible if someone gets hurt in that little, scratching the ground or whatever.
Dogs also dig.
That's what he's saying.
If I fall in
The dogs dig. There's a Gemara that's later on that says that if you leave an animal in the sun and it's surrounded by a fence, it's going to dig to get out to get under the fence.
Even if I fall, the owner of the dog is responsible.
So that's an interesting question. That was in a private property, but the owner will not be responsible.
It's on his property.
Even if it's on a public property. Yeah, only if a man digs a pit. So, Rabbanan, what do the Rabbanan do? We already have this limud. They also hold of this. Rabbanan trei ish barksiv. It says twice in the pasuk, a man by the pit. I don't know if I have the psukim over here that says that. Oh yeah, it says ki yiftach ishbar ki yichri ishbar. It says right, and it says in the pasuk. So each time it says ish, so that's okay. Rebbe. So if you have two times, then you can use it for the two things. Not the first guy, only the second guy, and also not the ox that digs the pit. Rebbe, I did the kasav high. Rebbe says you can't learn from the second one because it had to say it's symmetrical. So the second one is not a real limud. That follows like a Rabbi Yishmael type of limud. Rabbi Yishmael says anytime the Torah needs to repeat something, so it repeats the whole thing, and you can't learn from the whole thing, it had to repeat it anyway. So that's a Rabbi Akiva would probably not say this. Rabbi Akiva would say you can learn from every detail, Okay. Umimai de l'chiyuvi basra dilma l'chiyuvi kama. How do you know that we're coming to make the second person responsible? Maybe the first person should be responsible. But it says, don't think like that. Pasuk says that the corpse belongs, the carcass belongs to the owner of the pit. Who the covered Misa. And it says the carcass, obviously, is the owner of the pit, the one that caused it, that it could cause death, which means the last guy that dug the 10th tefach, not the first guy that dug the first 9. But that pasuk that says the carcass belongs to the owner of the pit, we need the Rava. We need it for what Rava said. Let's say there was an animal that was a carbon, but it got a mum, like a bechar or something, or any other carbon that got a mum, and it gets redeemed. So now, even though it's redeemed and you're allowed to just shecht it and eat the meat, but there are certain things that you're not allowed to do with it. You're not allowed to use the wool, because we don't want you to hang it. We don't want you to leave it around. You're not allowed to use the wool, and you're also not allowed to work it in the field. And also, if it's a nevela, you can't feed it to the dogs. You can't feed the meat to the dogs. Well, what happens now is when it says v'hamesi alai, that the carcass belongs to the owner of the pit, it's coming to tell me only something that the carcass would have some value. But because it's psulei mikdashim, it's a sacrifice that became invalid and it got redeemed, the carcass has 0 value. So v'hamesi alai tells me, v'mishamesh alai, only if the carcass would have value would you be responsible to pay for those damages. But over here, you won't be responsible to pay for those damages. If it would be an actual carbon, Rashi points out, then this would not be an exemption of a pit. This would be a full exemption, because you always pater if a carbon gets damaged, right? Because it says reyeyu v'leishashal hekdesh and all that. Amri, so they say like this. Says we can actually learn 2 things from this, because we're learning, first of all, that it's going to be the second guy that causes the death, and we're also learning that it's only something that has value after it becomes a carcass. But usually, sometimes we say you can't learn 2 things from the same pasuk. We can say it's automatically means that something that causes death. That's part of the meaning of the pasuk. So therefore, it would only be the second guy that's chayav, not the first guy. Okay. Good, Rav Naftali?
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand the source of this argument. The Rabbanim are quoting Pasukim, and Rebbe is using a logic. Is that the correct statement?
I think they're both using Pasukim, but the Rabbanan, I would say you're correct. Rebbe is using logic, and he's ignoring the Pasukim for whatever reason.
Yeah, he doesn't, for whatever reason, right? He's ignoring the Pasukim.
Right.
But he comes to a different conclusion.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good observation.
Rabbi.
Yeah.
So the Gemara is saying that 2 people can never be responsible for one pit. Together, it's always.
According to the Rabbanan, you don't have 2 people responsible for one pit, and according to it's not never, because according to Rabbi Akiva, if you own,
can't dig the pit together. They can't work together and build it.
Yeah, Shalom is bringing up a point that it is possible. There, in the next Gemara, we're going to see that it is possible for 2 people to dig a pit and both be responsible. But over here, we're talking about when one person dug only partial pit. It didn't reach 10, and then the second person completed it. So then that's a machlokes. If they'll be according to Rebbe, they'll both be responsible. When it comes to damages, according to the Rabbanan, they won't be responsible. Only the second person will be responsible. But we'll see. It's not 100%, because this was only when the first person dug 9 and the second person dug the 10th. What if the first person dug 10 and the second person dug 20? So the first person already did a full pit. But that's what we're about to learn. Taner Rabbanan was taught in a brisa. One person digs a pit of 10 tfachim. That could already cause death. And another person comes and digs another 10. Another person comes and digs it to 30. Kulan chayavim. They're all responsible. Each one did a full pit. I don't know if it needs to be to that extent of 10, 20, 30.
Technically,
It could
even if
probably
they
be
did
10,
one.
11, 12.
Right.
It would probably be the same thing.
That idea be translated to another kind of
Other damages?
transaction or any kind of
No. Well,
thing that
yes,
happens
yes
where
and no.
2 people or 3 people are involved in the construction of
Yeah, but
anything
each
from a
case would be
debt to
different. Each case would be different.
like if you took over the debt somebody else and then you didn't pay, something like that.
Yeah, we would have to look at each case individually. Right now, we're just examining. These few pages are just about a pit in a public air, so it's just examining these cases. But yeah, it's possible to
Could be.
do comparisons.
Could you think, let's say you have a pit like this, could you take half the side of it?
That's going to come up, I think, in a moment. Yeah, Shalom's asking. Let's say someone dug a pit and someone else widened the other side. Something like that. That's going to come up. The Gemara is going to discuss that.
But not deeper,
Just wider.
Could it have been a setup where I dig at 9, knowing that the 10th is really dangerous? So I leave it for this other guy who I want to see.
Right.
But then he's going to get in trouble for the setup.
Still his fault. Gemara says Veramini, but Veraminu, there's a contradiction. You're telling me that everyone is responsible because everyone, even the first guy, did enough that could cause the damage. Let's say someone digs a pit. Someone else goes into the pit and he fixes it up and he draws pictures. He puts a plaster he plasters the pit and then he draws pictures. Only the last one is chayiv. And here you're telling me that everyone is chayiv. So the problem, what did he do? This guy didn't even make it deeper. So why is he chayiv? Rashi says that because he makes it more narrow by plastering it, so he removes the air and now it's filled with this hotter air, and so therefore he's causing it. That's as if he's making it deeper. So lema harebi harabanan. Let's say that these two machlekes that these two brises is a machlekes between Rebbe and the Rabbanan, where Rebbe held that you can have more than one person responsible, and the Rabbanan hold that it's only one person's going to be responsible, only the last person. So the one that says, do you have a pencil? Do you have an eraser? Okay, I wrote something incorrect. So no, look in this one. Look at the one on the right.
One on the right.
Hello, can I use your pencil if it's in there? Okay, don't worry, that's fine. Okay, so we could say it's a machlekes. Well, Amar Rav Zvid said, Rabbanan. You don't have to say that these two brises is a machlekes. Why? Because you can say that both of them followed the Rabbanan. And the Rabbanan said that only the last person's chayiv, right? So how do we have the first brisa that says that everyone's chayiv? When did the rabbis say that only the last person is chayiv? That's That's because the first guy didn't do enough. And that's why the last person, he did the final straw that broke the camel's back. He's the guy that made it to 10. But if the first guy also broke the camel's back, and then the second guy comes and breaks the camel's leg, and even though everyone is going to be chayiv, because even the first guy already had enough that would cause the death. Okay, good possibility. Only thing is, 1 second. If the Rabbanan say that always the last person's chayiv, that everyone would be chayiv, if the first person, if each of them did enough to cause the death, what about the second brisa? The first guy dug it enough to cause the death. and only another guy jumps in there with his plaster bucket and starts plastering it and drawing pictures. And so we say he's the only one that's chayiv. Why? First guy also did enough. Amri, we say hasam shleiha by hevel. Over there wasn't enough ear that would cause death. The first guy, even though it was 10 tfachim, but it's because it was so wide, it was as if it's only 9 tfachim. And this guy that plastered it up, he made it more narrow. I don't know how big the space is, but I guess anything that's wider, it was probably wider than its depth. Anything that's wider than its depth would not have enough of that ear. So it was wider than its depth. This guy came and made it deeper than its width. Not deeper. He made it more narrow than its width. Right. So, yeah.
If I just read the simple meaning of the Mishnah, I get the impression that if someone dug a pit, whether it's 10 amos deep, if the second person just passed it and didn't cover it up, he's chayiv. And that's pretty much the bottom line.
Yeah. If the first person dug a pit and what are you saying? And then he walks away?
No, and then he walks away, and the second person just walks by it and just ignores it. It could be like negligence,
Right. That would be well, here's talking about
the second person's chayiv, not the first.
The second person's only chayiv here because he also was an owner of this pit. Because it starts off Barshal Shnei Shutfim, only if they're partners.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, the Mishnah says it belonged to.
Yeah. If someone walks by a manhole on the street, he sees the thing open. Not necessarily is he responsible for.
None of my business. Right?
It's none of my business. It looks a little scary, but I hope no one falls into that. Remember he does CPR on the guy? Remember that story? The guy comes home from a CPR class. He was taking this night CPR, and he comes home. He sees a manhole and a guy. No, I'm sorry. He sees a guy laying on the floor. So he runs over and he turns him over. He starts doing CPR. The guy says, "Excuse me," and he catches his breath. "I'm talking to my friend down in the manhole. Can you leave me alone?" Anyway. They have some like electrical things down in under the ground. Okay. I'm sorry, Yonatan, it's good?
Yeah, I understand. Like I was implying that both people were owners.
Yeah, but here they both dug it, or they're both responsible because it was theirs. Okay, so the Gemara is going to elaborate on that actually. Ikad Amri, there's another way of taking this contradiction between the two brises. We said we started off saying that it's a machlekes. How do you answer a contradiction? Either you say it's a machlekes, or you say the scenario is different. The case is different. Started off, we said it's a machlekes, Rebbe and the Rabbanan. Said no, it's the opinion of the Rabbanan, but the scenario is different. This one was when it couldn't have caused. It could have. The first pit could cause death. The second one, the first pit would not cause death. Why wouldn't it cause death? Because there wasn't enough bad air in there. Now, according to Shmuel says, well, what's the difference if there's air? If it's deep enough, then the impact is the problem. So here Rashi points out that we're talking about where it was filled with sponges, so there was no impact either. So there's no impact. The whole problem would have been the bad air, which Shmuel agrees is an issue, right? Like Rav and Shmuel, but Shmuel agrees to Rav that the bad air could also cause death. And the only thing is that over here there wasn't enough bad air because it was wider than it was deep. And then this guy comes and plasters it up. So that's the answer. So we changed the scenario. Ikadamri, those that say Amar Rav Zvid, that Rav Zvid said Hava Rebbe. Both opinions are going to follow Rebbe. Now Rebbe was the one that said that it's possible that two people could be obligated by what's it called? By Nezikin. The one that says everyone is chayiv. Rebbe always holds everyone's chayiv. By Nezikin, everyone was chayiv, and by Misif, they did enough. If each one dug 10, then everyone's chayiv. What about that other brisa that says that the last one is chayiv? We're talking about that there wasn't even enough bad air that to cause damages. For sure, not death. And the second person added the plaster, so he made it that it could cause damage and it could cause death. Okay, I'm a Rava.
I think in Sodom, it would charge the guy who fell in because it was meant as a resort area. It had sponges on the bottom and had plaster wall. It's pictures all around.
Okay.
Man, you're getting worse than me.
Yeah,
Watch out.
yeah.
Bad teacher. Okay, this is Gaza's. Tunnels.
You know, someone was eating his chicken. Something's wrong. It tastes like fish. They said, "Well, fish is not bad. Why don't you it doesn't. You can't compare the things. This is supposed to be this. This is supposed to be." Anyway, Amar Rava. Rava says, "Niach heaven al pi bar." See, what happened was over here, you had a pit. The pit was not 10 tefachim, but you put a stone on the edge of the pit, so it made the rim of the pit higher. And now it's 10 tefachim high. So instead of, we kept saying that someone's digging down. He's not digging down, he's just raising the rim. So Banal Machlaikas Rebbe v'Rabbanan. Rabba says that now you've introduced the Machlaikas, Rebbe and the Rabbanan, which is what we had before, that if someone had a pit that was only 9 tefachim, Rebbe says that if the second guy comes and completes it to 10, and then an animal falls in and gets damaged, both of them are going to be responsible. The Rabbanan say no, only the last person's going to be responsible. The Gemara says, Pshita, you already said this. What's Rava adding that we didn't know before? It says, Mao the Tema, I could have thought all we knew before was Lamatu the Havli Didei Kakatale. Before, because he's digging deeper, so he's increasing the bad air. But if you're just raising the rim, you're not increasing the air. You put a brick on one side of the pit. He didn't increase the air on the bottom. I could say that maybe no. So Kamash Malan. So we say that no, he's responsible anyway.
Why isn't he responsible for Rifnei or Mitchell and not having anything to do with it? Why do you read?
Yeah, now Lifnei has two possibilities. One opinion holds that it has nothing to do with putting a stumbling block in front of a blind person. It only has to do with someone causing another person to sin, like feeding him a piece of meat, saying it's kosher. I'm telling you, it's not a problem, and it was really treif. So you're not allowed to cause someone to do a sin. The other opinion holds that no, you're actually not allowed to put a stumbling block in front of. But that doesn't tell you that if you do, you're responsible. What we're learning now is the responsibility that comes after that. So yeah, the guy that puts it would be responsible for damages. Right. 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 So do we say, okay, Kamash Malan, we say that in other words, we have a chiddush here. We could have thought that maybe he's not doing anything to the air that's in the bottom. So we say no. The fact that there's air there, I don't know what the Kamash Malan is. So it's such a good svara, the Havamin.
Well, what I thought when we read it is regardless of the reason that he does it, because it occurred to me, the second partner came along and he said, oh, this is 9 tefachim. This could be dangerous. I'm going to put up some stones so people see a border. But he now made it 10.
Right.
And it seems to be saying he's responsible regardless. That's what I thought the was.
Yeah. The only thing is that what the Gemara says is that, oh, obviously he made it into 10. So then he's going to be chayav, according to the Rabbanan and according to Rebbe, they're both going to be chayav. So the Gemara says that's obvious. Anyone that makes it to 10 is that machlaikas. So we said, yeah, but because he didn't increase any of the hevel, so then I could have thought that maybe he shouldn't be chayiv.
The Rambam here,
So the chiddush is that no, he is going to be chayiv. Now the problem is that, but 1 second, why should he be chayiv if the whole issue here is just the hevel? Why should he be chayiv? He actually didn't increase the hevel.
so the Rambam gives an answer. And Naphtali's changed the scenario from he put one stone to a rim of stones. So
Oh.
here it says, thereby he's, by putting the rim of stones around, thereby increasing its depth to 10 tefachim.
Oh.
Thus he is blamed for causing the year at the
Is
bottom
that the Rambam or Ramban?
with a mem to attain the degree of foulness necessary to kill.
So
One
the
stone would
Dr.
not
Stein
have done.
answers this with the Rambam that says that he
One
didn't put
stone
one
would not
rock
have
in
done.
front of it. He put a rim around it. So then he decreases the air. Very good. Very good.
So Naphtali was on to it.
It's good to use
Thank
that.
you, Rennie.
Yeshikoyach Naphtali,
our
we miss
scroll.
you. I miss you.
Daf pad. What do you call that? Daf pad. What do you call your thing? Shas pad. Okay.
I can even press a button and read you directly
From the Rambam.
Wow.
Boy, Rava.
I love this.
Rava has a question.
Oh, I have to purchase the volumes with that one.
This is talking about someone that dug a pit 10 tefachim. However, tam tefach. Tam means he filled in, like tamama is like to fill in. He filled in 1 tefach. He made it 9. He's becoming a little bit of a tzaddik. V'silek avanov. But then he took it away. Mahu, what's the din? So no. What did he do over here? Someone dug a pit 10 tefachim. Another guy comes along and makes one dug a pit 9 tefachim. Another guy comes along and digs it to 10, but then he
First
fills
guy comes
in.
back. First guy comes back.
Or the
No.
second one
Yeah, that's
the
the
second
Russian
one.
removes the rib. By the way,
Chazar
we're back to
ha'achron.
9.
It's the second guy.
See,
The
like
second
I said,
guy,
He does the first thing and then comes back. again.
no. The first guy dug 9. The second guy dug 1 more tefach, but then he filled in his last tefach.
or he made the rim and then removed the rim. This is Sila Kavana.
Oh, Sila Kavana is talking about, is it or Sila Kavana? Or on the top is, I have Ufvis Sila Kavana.
It says, it's the one who had dug the 10th tefach, filled in that with rib, or the one who added the tefach of stones,
Wow.
removed the
Can you use your
stones.
pencil? Wow. Okay, excellent. So, Mahu, what's going to be the din? Our question is like this. Do we say that the fact is that the first guy only dug 9? The second guy that dug the 10th refills in. So whatever I added, I took away. My part, I cleaned up, right? By Dilma, this happens in yeshiva all the time. There's a guy that makes a mess. So we tell him, okay, go clean up. He says, I just made one little thing. You happen to catch me, but the whole place was a mess beforehand. And now I have to clean everyone's thing up. So here, this guy, so the first guy dug the pit. And the second guy added 1 tefach. So you say, okay, you're responsible. So okay, I filled in my tefach. That's all I did. I'm only filling in my tefach. So do we say, okay, he filled in his tefach, he's exempt, he cleaned up his part, right? No, when you added that tefach, you become responsible for the entire pit. And now when you filled in 1 tefach, you only filled in 1 tefach. What about all the rest? You can't say I didn't do that, because when you added to it, it's like you did the whole thing.
If you take away the tefach,
If you would fill in 1 tefach, he was never responsible. he kept doing you would say, oh, he's a tzaddik, he's making it less. Every tefach he fills in is a tzaddik. But here he dug it an extra tefach. So he's a bad guy. But now when he filled in that one tefach, so there's a shaila, Rabbi has a question. Do we hold him responsible for the other 9 because he added it to 10? Or do we say that whatever he did, he took away? Where it says take
What if someone else does it?
if a third person fills it in. Oh, that's a very good question. Shalom is asking.
Only
You
yes,
see,
it's very good question.
you see what happened over here is one guy dug 9,
Right.
another guy digs 10. When the other guy digs 10, he becomes responsible
For
for the whole thing.
Right.
But when he fills it in, he becomes that we have a shaila. Is he still responsible for damages? Because for all the 9. But let's say he didn't fill it in, someone else filled it in. He could probably say the same thing. It would probably have the same shaila. He says, whatever my part is already filled in, whether I did it or someone else did it, I should be exempt.
Third guy came and filled it in. Nobody would be responsible for that, obviously.
Right.
But the original guy would be responsible for damages.
The original guy said, but unless the second guy that dug it to 10 takes over all the responsibility.
It's the new owner. The new owner.
According to the Rabbanan, he takes over the responsibility. It's only when we get rid of it.
These are all cases, real cases in Florida now. The principle of polluter pays. So I only polluted the last part of the lake. Yeah, but it was 90% polluted before. Who pays for it? So they can't figure it out. No one pays anything.
That makes
Rabbi.
sense. Yeah.
If you have a pit that's owned by 2 or more people, by multiple people,
I don't hear. Multiple people owned it or dug it.
own it.
Okay.
Well, yeah, it's owned by 2 people, but the last person to dig, because he digs it a little more, could you say that he makes a kinyan on it and now he owns the whole thing? Or it
I
doesn't
think
work that way?
the ownership of it makes them both responsible, but regardless of who dug the last one.
Mhm.
That's what it seems. Guy owns it; it's his responsibility. They would have to pay. I think
I'm a little stuck on this.
on the Mishnah.
Yeah, because if it's owned by multiple people and the last person changed it, why either adding 1 tefach and going from like 14 almost deep to 13, or digging it even deeper past 10 tefachim, he's the last person to make any changes to it. So I would think that he's the only person who'd be chayav, because he was the last person to make any.
Once it can cause death, we seem to say that everyone's responsible. If the first person dug it 10, the other person makes it 11. We seem to say that everyone's responsible, at least according to one answer of Rav Zvid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Amar Rabba Bar Bachana, Amar Shmuel Bar Martha. Rabba Bar Bachana says the name of Shmuel, son of Martha. Okay. Bar Shmaina, Mehem Shnei Tvachim Mayim. I think someone asked this yesterday. I don't remember who. A pit of 8 Tvachim, and two of those Tvachim are water. He says Chayev. It's going to be Chayev. In other words, it's not 10 Tvachim. It's only 8 Tvachim, but 2 are water. My timer. What's the reason? Kol Tefach Damaya could trade the Avasha Dami. Talking about the bad ear. So water's worse. So every tefach of water is considered 2 tefachim of dry land. So the 8 tefachim is really 10 tefachim when it comes to the bad ear. Yeah.
When you're talking about when there was a rim around it, it's making less high because there's like a wall around a well. If the guy just like steps on it and falls in.
Yeah.
Why did people make that wall higher?
So
If he made a rim around it, he's saying don't stand
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. So, but we're talking about if it would be a wall that would be 10 tefachim, then that would be considered a micah. That would be good. But
A wall that's 1 tefach.
But a wall that's 1 tefach is
It's not
just
long,
something
it's
that
not
people
big
can
enough.
trip on. Yeah. It's more of a stumbling than a.
Or should you think it's 2
It would have to be 10 tvachim to be a wall, yeah.
A well has 10 tvachim. You have to take a ladder to get up there.
No, 10 tvachim is not so high. 10 tvachim is about this. This would be
10
considered a wall.
tvachim is this.
So 10 of these. Between 30. So next point. Ibailu, the Gemara has a question. Bar Tisha. Oh my gosh. Okay, let me get to the finish this. Bar Tisha mihan tefach echad mayim mahu. Let's say there's 9 tvachim, and one of those 9 is water. Mi amrin given the lane of fishim maya let's be habla. Do we say we only had the salacha by 8, and 2 of them are water? Over here, there's only one tefach of water. So do we say that that's 10? Or maybe because it's so deep, it's already 9. That should fill in for that. So it goes on. Let's go the other way. Let's say you have 7 tvachim, and 3 of those tvachim are water. Mahu, what do we say? Do we say that for sure it's a problem because there's so much water? That's a real problem. By Dilmar, do we say maybe it's not so deep, it's less behavla, you're close to the surface, so maybe it's not a problem. So take it, I'm gonna leave that as a question. Okay, let's stop over here.
So you're gonna go 3 more lines.
Let's leave it.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good day.